Welcome to Have You Heard, where we talk about issues at the intersection of agriculture and engineering. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Morgan Hayes and Josh Jackson.
Welcome to the Have You Heard podcast. This is episode number 10. Today we're going to start our show with what's happening on our farms, and then we're going to discuss equipment maintenance and repairs, our most fun winter activity, easiest way to spend money on a farm, on the equipment. I'm Morgan Hayes. I'm an assistant professor in the Ag Engineering Department here at the University of Kentucky. And in my personal life, I farm in Boyle County, about 500 acres with my husband. We have a commercial cattle and hay operation there.
I'm Josh Jackson, assistant professor in Biosystems and Agriculture Engineering, focusing on precision livestock farming. And I farm in Mercer County, and we focus on hay production and raising Angus cattle.
Okay, Josh, so let's get started today with what's been happening on the farm this past week.
So what's been happening, I mentioned it last week. We went ahead and did it since the ground was nice and frozen. I went ahead and frost seeded some. So we got some clover put out there. So on a little fair chunk of the ground, we put some clover down, red clover down.
Awesome.
Since fertilizer is going to be very expensive, we go ahead and try to preempt some of that and put some clover out there.
Try and get some nitrogen out of the clover instead of paying for it.
So, yep, get some, but it's a little fun this weekend because on the hillsides, I was driving I had the 2-wheel drive tractor, and I was actually fishtailing going down some hills because we still had a little bit of snow, made it slick enough to make it a fun time spreading seeds. So there's probably on the hill itself, it's probably not quite the rate desired to try and do the 10 pounds per acre.
Interesting.
But, I'll get it back out there and walk it if I have to.
Yeah, well, or you could put some cattle out there and let them walk it in. That might not be a bad idea. They're pretty sure-footed on those hills, a little better than the tractors are when it's really slick out there. So, yeah, on our farm this week, we've been feeding. We've been taking full advantage of the frozen weather. We got some extra hay put out on the rented farm and got some hay unrolled on the farm that we have some feeding pads on. Also, we got rid of a couple animals that we needed to from our weaned group of calves that we sold privately. So we talked about that last week, some private treaty sales. So those few animals are off the radar right now. And that's, it's a relief. It's like one less thing to feed.
One less thing to worry about. Yeah. Especially this time of year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I said last time that my husband's been traveling some, so I've been doing some of the heavy feeding load that doesn't always fall on me. So it's always nice when we get one less thing that we have to feed in a given day.
Yep, one less thing to check, and we're throwing out hay. We're going through a lot of hay right now, so it seems like we're going through a lot of hay, but we are in January, early February. Going to be early February here, so this is the time to. I definitely pushing that hay.
Absolutely, yeah, we are going through hay at a pretty good rate right now as well. But we also just did inventory this past week, and we're in pretty good shape. We have extra hay that we can sell. It's a decision about whether or not to list it. There's quite a bit of hay on the market right now, and not all of it is at a price that I would necessarily sell my hay for. So we'll wait and see what the market looks like. And we have some people that may pick up more than they anticipated. So we'll see what we're left with. But I'd rather hold it than sell it at too low a price.
Right, and plus, with the way January's been, it's hard to know what February and March is going to hold.
That's right. If it doesn't get green in late March, which it has been doing the last couple of years, but if it doesn't do that, people will feed a lot longer into the spring, and they'll use more hay than they anticipate.
Yep, it makes it a challenge, and sometimes you just have to see, how far you plan for and how far you can actually make it.
Absolutely. So yeah, the one other thing that you've been hitting on almost every week, and you and I both, we keep saying we're doing equipment maintenance and repairs, and that's our topic today. But, this is one of those things that's sort of an ongoing all winter type of goal for both of us. So why don't you start by talking about what sort of maintenance and repairs you're really focused on this winter?
This is really a lot of what we try to do is kind of preventive maintenance, or we're doing repairs from last year. And some of it is, kind of as life happens. So we kind of have two general strategies. So we repair, as needed. Some stuff we've kind of put to the wayside, but that's kind of our general strategy. Is right now we're taking care of what's a long-term goal, long-term strategy for repairing stuff. So we have our skid steer has been down for a while now. That was kind of one of those as it happened in emergency situations. It broke down in the middle of the road, and our charge pump went down, and so we had to pretty much get in there and fix it. So, and it's still being in the process being repaired. So it definitely broke fairly well. So resiliently. So, looking at replacing that as opposed to the whole pump, which is going to be fairly expensive. So a lot of it is trying to do that cost savings if we can now. Maybe not replace the whole unit, but we can replace that charge pump itself and save some money.
Right.
Looking at, from our tractor standpoint, this is the time of year we're working on, we're getting ready to change all of our oil here. We change our oil annually.
Okay.
And that's, sometimes it may not be needed. You're supposed to be doing every, 200 to 400 hours, depending on what your specifications say. But we go ahead and change our oil and our fuel filters, and on the tractors, our air filters.
Interesting.
Because, we're going through, we can see it when we're out there baling. You see a cloud of dust when we're doing those soybeans. And so it's just, we know it's putting a challenge on the air filter. So making sure we have all their equipment, we want to make sure that everything is running as smoothly as possible. So we go ahead and replace all those filters on an annual basis.
Interesting. So we actually change ours, and I don't know if this is a common practice, but we change ours by hour. And usually on the conservative side, so if there's a range, we always go to the shorter end of the range. We always err on the side of changing oil more often rather than less. But we will also make a note on our filters. We'll scratch into the bottom of it, our hours when we put it on, so that we know what our hours are coming off. So we usually have a pretty good idea. The one benefit of farm equipment, in particular tractors, is that you can usually see the oil filter pretty readily. So it's not hard to figure out what's happening. You can usually check
the older ones.
Especially the older ones, and we definitely have older ones. We do not have any cab tractors, so we have pretty good access to older 70s, 80s models on our tractor, so we can see them pretty clearly.
And we thought about trying to modify it, but we really want to make sure, we don't need to necessarily change it so often, but we just want to make sure everything's going to be in tip-top shape and ready to go. Not put an unnecessary challenge on our tractor. We don't need additional stuff trying to break on us.
Right. Yeah, we have one tractor that is currently down. We've been working on it. We purchased it knowing it was something that we were going to have to work on, and we've gotten most of the repairs done. We've got one more seal in the rear end on the axle that needs to be handled before it gets put completely back together. But hopefully by the end of winter we have that done, because it's our largest tractor and the one that we'll most likely use for
baling, probably.
No, not for baling, actually. We'll use it for spreading manure. It's just a big, heavy tractor. It's perfect for heavy loads, making sure we don't move going up or down a hill. We also might use it some for bush hogging with the 15-foot bush hog.
Yep.
It is our one tractor that's significantly over 100 horsepower. So that is the one that
it's just a workhorse.
It's a workhorse. It's not one that we actually want to bale with. We use a 4x5 baler, and it's smaller. It'll handle pretty well on about a 75 horse tractor. So rather than running a larger motor and paying for the fuel, we'll probably run that with a smaller tractor if we can.
Try to be a little more efficient.
Mm-hmm. I would say the one thing about, you talked about preventative maintenance, and this I think is a really interesting concept. So for us, we really focus on preventative maintenance on a couple pieces of equipment, and one of those is our baler. And that's because we have one baler. For cutting hay, we have two hay binds. So we always have redundancy in that part of the process. So if something goes down, we can return back to the farm and replace it with a different one and continue rolling on that day. So we want to make sure both are in operational shape at the beginning of the season. So making sure all those little things are done over the maintenance-wise are done. But in particular, the equipment that we don't have redundancy on, it's really important that we get that fixed the best of our ability right now, because that's the equipment that really hurts if it goes down in the season.
Yeah, I can see that. And we had three cutters. We have disc bind, we had a hay bind, and we had another disc cutter, just a cutter. And so, at some point throughout the year when we used those in the past years, we had three starting out this beginning of the season. We started out one hay field. And it's like, start out with three, and by the end of the day, I think we had one going. And so you just, sometimes you can fix and repair, but, things will still happen.
Right.
And so we just try to be as prepared as possible. And some of our one with the flails, we'll go ahead and look at our bearings, try to see if there's any extra catch in there. So we go ahead and replace bearings if needed. And it's, it's a job. It's definitely a job that takes a good part of 2 days, but we want to make sure we're not spending that 2 days while we're trying to cut hay.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, it's things like chains, some belts on some of our equipment, all that stuff, really getting a good check on it in the winter. also making sure that everything got cleaned properly. That's a big deal, to get all the dust and dirt off.
See, we're a little odd because I don't know if we're different, but we wash our baler after every use. So after we get done with whatever we're doing for that day, we'll go ahead and spray it off, clean it off. That was something Dad taught me. It's like, it's going to be fun to clean a baler, and so every time we got done with it, we were out there cleaning it. So
yeah, no, our baler does get. Actually, we use an air hose on it, an air chuck, and blow off rather than wash off. But that is an interesting. And I think probably doing it every time is the appropriate thing to do. I don't know that we're quite that meticulous about it, but we do get it cleaned off pretty regularly. It's more things like the haybine, just little spots where everything's inside, so it's stored inside. So there's nothing that's going to get watered in with any residue on those surfaces. But before we go in for the next season, and while we're cleaning everything, that also makes sure that we see all the parts really well.
Okay. Yeah, we also went through, like last year, we had to place a couple gears, on our chains, because you look at it, and when they start looking like a saw, almost a chainsaw, or not a circular saw blade on your gears, that's when you definitely let it go a little past its time.
Right. And a chain breaking is really difficult to manage in the field, depending on which chain it is. So that's always important to get those done early.
And so that's, for the chains, we try to keep spare parts around, and so, or the spare lengths, half lengths and full lengths.
Yeah.
And we even keep, 60, 40, 80, but we even keep a 50 around because we figured out that the fertilizer buggies use a 50 roller chain. And so whenever whoever's buggy we're borrowing, to spread with, it's always a pain. It's like, well, we went ahead and just bought 50, so we have it on hand when and if their chain breaks, depending on how they were doing their maintenance.
Yeah, we bought some extra chain last year, and I will say this year with supply chains and some other things, it's even more important to have some of those sort of backup pieces, even if you're not replacing it right now, just to have it on hand. And this is a perfect time of year to sort of go through your inventories and figure out what you need to order, what you used last summer, and get them reordered before the season starts. Because when you go to get it at the store right now, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be there, and the price is not necessarily. I don't know that it's going up at this point, but it's also not probably going down. So it doesn't hurt to get it purchased right now.
And, we're replacing, flipping blades on our disc cutters, flipping, inspecting blades. This time of year, we're also changing out our blades on our haybine. And so going through the bar, we actually asked for some rivets the other day from the lady, and she was like, she sent us one section, like, oh, you need rivets for your haybine. Okay, nobody's doing this time of year usually, but so we're just trying to be preemptive in some of our maintenance work.
Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation just generally for people, is that if you get things right now and take them out of commission, it's not a problem. But if they come out of commission in the middle of the season when you need them, it's really, really difficult. And last summer was really a testament to how hard it was sometimes to get a part when something came out of commission in the middle of a season. So that's even more important, I think, right now with the supply chain issues, to really do that preventative.
Even last summer, we were seeing 2-week wait time on parts, minimum. Yeah. And so that can destroy you for, as far as hay quality.
Absolutely. Yeah. 2 weeks on hay that was proper to cut. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, it's probably raining. So you're probably 3 or 4 weeks out realistically before you get that hay cut. And quality wise, that can be devastating.
And so, we try to do, so we, talk about our cutter, and then our rake. We're replacing all of our, any rake teeth that are broken, because usually we have a wheel rake, and so if you have one that breaks, it puts a little more stress, it seems like, on the next one adjacent to it. And so just making sure we have everything as prepared as possible for this upcoming year. Rake, baler, manure spreader, we're doing some flighting. Yeah. So
we have a hydraulic cylinder on our manure spreader we need to get replaced. Fortunately, the back gate is just locked up right now, but I don't want to run it down the road that way, obviously, because then stuff would spill out. But we were able to finish out our spreading that way last year when we had a hose, not even a hose, it's actually the connection on the hydraulic that blew. So that cylinder is gone, so we need to get a new one on there this winter. But it's sort of an unusual size, so we're still working on sourcing specific.
Sometimes when stuff breaks, you realize how, you think they use common fastener, common parts, but then you realize how unique some aspects are, and it just drives you crazy when they do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and older equipment, that's the one thing that we have in common is that we both have older equipment, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to order depending on the brand and how readily available it is locally here. The one thing we did last summer that we changed out the type of grease that we use in our grease certs on our equipment, and I think our newer grease is actually a little bit higher quality, so it's held up better, it seems to me.
Okay.
Anytime we re-grease something, I don't see as much water coming out of it, so I am really happy about that decision that we made. It's not necessarily, I guess it is preventative maintenance that we're really doing by greasing everything on a regular basis, but that's one thing that I'm really happy about.
The other thing we do as well is we actually go through and time some of our disc spine. We'll go ahead and time some of those hubs. So it's gotten a little out usually over the season, and so we'll go ahead and pull all them off, and it's another half a day job. But something we do just to have that. If we need that piece of equipment, it's ready to go.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Oh, but it's just one of those things we try to go through everything as comprehensive as possible. Then we'll send tractors off as well to, at this time of year, at least only one at a time, but
right,
to get worked on if we need clutch work or brake work or whatever it may need, the big repairs, we'll go ahead and send off.
Yeah, and those are slow going. I know we have my mother and stepfather have a tractor that they've sent off that's on their farm, and it's been at the shop for 6 or 7 weeks, but I was told it finally made it into the shop to get worked on this week. So, they were willing to bring it down early, but they still hadn't touched it. It took quite a while, and I think that's partly the
Parts
issues with parts coming in, and then also just that this is a heavy time of year for you. So, if your plan is to get equipment worked on, talking to the shops early is probably a good.
Yep. Get your schedule in now. Get queued up now, because it does take time just to get into the shop and then being in the shop as well.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's probably a pretty good summary of our sort of approach to maintenance, but it's good that you have a lot of preventative stuff as well as a little bit of repair work just to make sure that we're ready to go next year. What else is happening on the farm next week? Because I know you're probably still doing more repair and maintenance work.
So, a little bit still the repair and maintenance, probably looking at bearing on one of our pieces of equipment, but we're actually going to be trying to spread a little more clover seed. So get a little more out this week. And so we have 2 ways to spread it. One was the tractor on the hillsides. And then we also use a truck and a spreader as well. So it'll go a little faster.
Okay.
And we have the GPS. We have 1 GPS unit. So we'll put the GPS in the truck. So make sure that's going to be accurate over the flat portions.
Okay.
So it can rock and roll. And the case and myself will be on the hillsides going slow and methodically, hopefully. Hopefully.
Yeah,
so,
it's a good frozen
weekend
weekend coming up, so it's perfect time to get a little more. And, it's one of those things, it might be frozen for another month, and we might get some thawing happening here in another week, and it may not get frozen again. So I think it's perfect timing to get that done. We're very lucky. We had really strong stands of clover in most of our fields last year, so we haven't chosen to spread any clover. I think that might be a little bit just the soil conditions and our rotational approach. It just tends to really help the clover thrive.
Okay.
I'm not really sure why, actually. I see other people around me that don't have great clover stands, but ours were really strong last year. So we're going to sort of see what happens for the next year or two. And, probably if at some point we need more clover, we will address it. But currently we have a strong enough stand. We're not looking to add to it.
If you have a good stand, just leave it alone, let it do its thing.
I know. I'm not complaining at this point. It makes life a lot easier in the winter and in the summer. Actually, it actually handles some of the temperatures pretty well.
You guys want to work any calves here, or?
I don't think we'll have to work any calves. Our animals that we have weaned that are in the barn right now, we will weigh them because we will do one final adjustment on feed to make sure that we get them back to about 1% body weight on feed, at least 0.75%, just to make sure that they're still gaining weight the way we want them to until we sell them. Also evaluate the market on those. Market's been looking pretty good for some heavier weaned calves, so hopefully we can get them sold at a reasonable price in the next couple weeks. Certainly by the end of February that has to be done. Other than that, we also have 2 steers that are going off for processing this coming week, so that'll be nice, a little extra income coming in from that.
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are our big sort of agenda items this week, is to just keep working on putting weight on animals.
Keep working on putting weight on, selling some, and keep on feeding hay, I guess.
Yeah. And our repair work this week is on one of the trucks, not actually on a tractor. So we've got a hub on one of the farm trucks that needs replaced. So I'm on my way to Granger this afternoon to pick up a piece of equipment that we need in order to get a circlip off.
Yep. And you don't realize how, like, the running errands, it always takes a lot longer than you think it should or would.
It does take a lot longer, but it just, today it made sense since I was here in Lexington for me to pick it up, and that way it'll be around when it's time to do the task.
Yep.
So.
It's always helpful.
And with that, guys, we will see you next week.
Take care.
Have You Heard is a production of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, along with the Department of Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering. Discover what's wildly possible at ca.uky.edu.